In this video, I'm going to take you inside the boat crew launching missions from the belly of a U.S. Expeditionary Sea Base, one of the strangest, wettest, and most overlooked jobs on one of the Navy's most unusual ships, starting with, before we talk about the crew itself, before we get into lines, cranes, RHIBs, salt spray, helmets, shouted commands, and the weird reality of lowering mission boats off a giant sea base in the middle of the ocean. Let's make sure you understand the part of the ship this whole story revolves around. Because when most people picture a warship, they think about the bridge, the deck guns, or maybe the flight deck. They picture what is visible from a distance. The Expeditionary Sea Base is different. A lot of what makes it useful is not the glamorous topside view. It is the giant working spaces built into the ship itself. That is where the belly idea comes from. The ESB has a huge lower mission deck beneath the flight deck. It is a staging zone, loading zone, boat support zone, equipment handling zone, and launch and recovery workspace all folded into one. This is where crews manage the small craft, the gear, the cranes, the forklifts, the line handling, the mission packages, and all the support work that allows the ship to do far more than just sit there and look important. From the outside, the ESB can look like a strange hybrid between a floating base, a helicopter platform, and a giant logistics barge that somebody upgraded for modern warfare. From the inside, especially down on the mission deck, it feels more like an industrial machine built to push boats, equipment, and people into action. And that is exactly why the boat crew matters. Because the ship can have all the steel, all the deck space, all the cranes, and all the mission concepts in the world. None of it means much unless a real crew can safely launch boats, recover them, load them, control them, and keep the whole operation moving in rough, noisy, shifting conditions. When civilians hear boat crew, they sometimes imagine something simple. A few sailors hop into a small craft, untie it, and head off across calm water to do whatever needs doing. That is not this. A boat crew launching from an expeditionary sea base is operating inside a carefully controlled shipboard evolution where everything has to line up: sea state, crane movement, deck safety, boat position, timing, line handling, communications, personnel movement, and the mission itself. The boats being handled can support all kinds of work depending on the deployment, special operations support, mine countermeasures support, inspection and transfer tasks, recovery work, security missions, unmanned system support, or mission package movement. Sometimes they are 7-meter or 1-meter RHIBs. Sometimes they are supporting a larger operation tied to helicopters, mine hunting systems, or off-ship teams. Sometimes they are part of a sequence where the whole ship feels like a floating base, spitting capability outward in every direction. So no, this is not a simple take the boat out job. This is a launch and recovery job inside a shipboard machine where the sea is moving, the hull is towering over the water, the mission deck is active, and the consequences for doing it badly are immediate. Here is the thing people miss about the ESB. It is valuable because it can project useful things away from itself. Helicopters, boats, mission teams, equipment, unmanned, systems, support, packages. That means the boat crew is one of the groups turning the ship from a platform into an actual operating base. Without them, the mission deck stays theoretical. And that is what makes this role so different from ordinary seamanship. These sailors are not just handling a boat. They are helping convert a giant support ship into a forward launch node where smaller craft can move people, sensors, security teams, and mission packages exactly where they need to go. On some days, the boat is the errand runner. On other days, it is the first link in a much larger operational chain. With them, the ship can move people and gear into the water, support teams away from the hull, recover returning craft, help launch mine warfare support missions, and create a constant link between the giant base ship and the smaller, faster tools that actually go do the close-in work. In plain English, the boat crew is part of what makes the ship feel alive. They are not the top of the poster stars most people think about when they hear Navy, but if a mission depends on getting a RHIB loaded, lowered, controlled, and sent into the water under real conditions, these are the people who make that possible. If you want to understand this life, you have to picture the mission deck correctly. This is not a pretty yacht garage. It is not a neat marina. It is not a peaceful boathouse. It is steel, shadows, noise, painted safety zones, gear stacked where it needs to be, heavy equipment movement, forklifts, handlers, line teams, mission packages, and sailors who are trying to make complicated launches look routine. The mission deck is one of those places where outsiders might think, this looks chaotic, while the crew working there is actually running a very strict system. They know where the boat sits. They know where the hook comes down. They know who handles the lines. They know who stays clear. They know when to move and when freezing in place is the smarter decision. They know how the boat behaves, when it starts to take weight, when it begins to swing, and when the sea outside the hull starts adding its own opinion to the whole event. That is why the crew's confidence matters so much. This is never just one sailor and a coxswain. A real launch evolution involves a whole chain of people. You have the boat crew itself. You have line handlers controlling the boat while it is being positioned. You may have material handling teams moving the craft or associated gear on the mission deck. You have crane operators involved in certain launch and recovery evolutions. You have safety personnel watching the whole thing. You have supervisors coordinating sequence and timing. You may have mission specialists, aviation support teams, or mine countermeasures, people whose own operations depend on the boat getting into the water correctly. That layered setup is part of what makes the ESB so strange and so impressive. On some ships, small boat operations are important but secondary. On the ESB, they are much closer to the center of the design. This ship was built to support missions that need off-ship movement. So the people down in the mission deck ecosystem are not doing side work, they are doing core work. And because the ESB is a hybrid crewed platform, with both military personnel and civilian mariners playing different roles across the ship, the overall process can involve an unusual mix of shipboard expertise. One team controls the boat, another handles lines, another operates deck equipment, another enforces safety. Another is already thinking 3 steps ahead to what the boat is carrying and why it matters. That is a lot of moving parts, which is exactly why the team has to be disciplined. One of the easiest mistakes to make when imagining this job is thinking the mission begins at splash point. It does not. It begins with setup. The boat has to be ready. The gear has to be loaded correctly. The mission objective has to be clear. The launch path has to be understood. The sea state has to be evaluated. Safety equipment has to be staged. Lines have to be ready. The crane sequence or deck movement plan has to be confirmed. The people riding the boat need to know what phase comes first and what happens if something goes wrong before they are even clear of the ship. That means the crew spends a lot of time preparing for moments that, from the outside, look short. A launch may last minutes. Getting ready for it can take much longer, and that is where the mental load starts. Because when a crew does this job well, it can look easy. But that easy feeling is built on a lot of invisible labor: checking, briefing, staging, inspecting, repositioning, and quietly killing little problems before they grow teeth. That is real shipboard professionalism. It does not wait for drama. It reduces the odds of drama before the boat ever moves. A big reason this work is so interesting is that it is inherently awkward. A small boat belongs close to the water. An expeditionary sea base does not feel close to the water when you are standing inside it. The ship is huge. Its working spaces tower over the sea. Its structure, freeboard, and mission deck geometry create a completely different set of launch and recovery problems than a simple dockside pier would. The boat crew is trying to put a relatively small, fast, responsive craft into the water from a much larger, slower, heavier platform that is itself rising, dipping, and drifting with the sea. That mismatch is everything. It changes the timing, it changes the feel, it changes how carefully the crew has to manage weight and motion. It changes the way a line handler thinks. It changes how a crane movement feels. It changes how quickly a normal-looking situation can become dangerous if a swell hits at the wrong moment or if the boat starts to swing a little farther than planned. That is why the work has such an industrial edge to it. This is not graceful. It is precise. It is not cinematic in a polished way. It is cinematic in a lot of steel is moving and everybody better know their job way. One of the most underrated parts of this whole mission is line handling. To somebody who has never been around serious small boat operations, it can look like line handlers are just standing there holding ropes. They are not. They are controlling motion. They are helping keep the boat from swinging wrong, drifting wrong, rotating wrong, or contacting the ship at the wrong time. They are shaping the boat's behavior during one of the most sensitive moments of the entire evolution. They are doing it while heavy equipment is involved, while the sea is involved, and while every other part of the team is depending on them not to get sloppy. Good line handlers help a dangerous process stay boring. And boring is exactly what you want during a launch. Because if the boat starts moving unpredictably next to the hull, everybody's stress level changes instantly. If a line gets fouled, if tension behaves unexpectedly, if the timing between handlers and operators is off, the problem does not stay theoretical for long. So, a lot of what makes these crews good is not dramatic heroics. It is small, sharp competence. No matter how ready the team is, the sea still gets a vote. That never stops being true. The boat may be prepared, the crew may be ready, the launch sequence may be clean, but the water outside the ship is not a polished pool. It is moving. The hull is moving. The boat is going to respond to that movement. And once the craft is clear, the mission begins in an environment that can go from manageable to ugly in a hurry. That is one reason the crew has to respect the transition moment so much. Inside the mission deck, you are still within the ship's system. Once the boat is in the water and clear, you are entering a more exposed phase where your small craft has to start acting like exactly what it is, a mission tool in open water, operating beneath the shadow of a giant base ship. That can feel exhilarating. It can also feel violent. The coxswain has to feel the boat immediately. The crew has to adjust immediately. If the mission involves carrying people, towing small gear, supporting a mine countermeasures task, checking on another launch, or moving toward a specific objective, the tempo starts right away. There is no gentle transition from garage mode to action mode. 1 second you are in the belly of the ship, the next second you are out in the water doing the job. This is another thing that makes the topic so good. A RHIB coming out of an ESB is not always the headline, but it is often supporting the headline. Maybe the helicopter operation depends on those boats being in place. Maybe mine countermeasures teams need them for support and recovery work. Maybe unmanned systems need to be launched, checked, escorted, or recovered. Maybe they are moving personnel tied to a special operations task. Maybe they are helping create the connective tissue between the big sea base and the smaller, sharper mission tools that go do close work. That means the boat crew often lives in a strange zone of importance. They may not be the public face of the mission, but if they mess up, the visible mission may not happen at all. That creates a very specific kind of pressure. It is not glamorous pressure. It is support pressure. The kind where your work has to be fast, clean, and reliable because other people's success is literally built on top of it. And honestly, that describes a huge amount of military life. The famous part usually stands on the shoulders of the part most people never see. People often focus on launch because launch sounds exciting, but recovery can be nastier. At launch, the boat is fresh, the sequence is clean, and the crew is beginning the mission. At recovery, people may be tired, the weather may be worse. The boat may be wet, loaded, or more stubborn to control. Timing has to be reestablished. The ship's motion may not be helping. Everybody has to re-enter the same dangerous zone where small craft, big hull, equipment movement, and line control all matter again. And now you are doing it at the end of a mission instead of the beginning. That changes how it feels. Fatigue matters more. Small mistakes become more tempting. The crew may know home, chow, and a dry shirt are close. That is exactly when discipline has to stay tight. A good recovery is a sign of a mature crew. It means they did not spend all their focus on the launch and forget that the boat also has to come back through the same narrow door it left through. The weirdest part of all this may be how ordinary the surrounding life still feels. The boat crew is doing something that sounds specialized and cinematic, but afterward, they go right back into normal ship routine: berthing, chow, noise, passageways, equipment, maintenance, cleaning, laundry, waiting, briefings, more waiting, maybe bad sleep, maybe another launch later, maybe a night recovery, maybe a schedule change because the mission shifted. That contrast is a huge part of military reality. 1 hour, you are helping lower a mission boat off a giant sea base in open water. A few hours later, you are standing in line for food or trying to grab 10 quiet minutes before the next evolution. There is no cinematic music. There is just routine wrapped around intensity. And that routine matters because it is what allows the crew to reset. If you live long enough around shipboard operations, you realize that professionalism is not just what happens during the cool part. It is also whether people can live in cramped, repetitive, noisy conditions and still bring a sharp mind to the next job. That is hard. Harder than it looks. The reason this topic matters is simple. A U.S. Expeditionary Sea Base is designed to be useful because it can push missions outward from itself. The boat crew is one of the teams that physically makes that happen. They turn storage into movement. They turn planning into launch. They turn steel space into actual mission output. They work in the underside of a strange ship in a place most outsiders will never see, doing a job that combines seamanship, equipment handling, teamwork, and real physical nerve. They have to trust each other. They have to trust the sequence. They have to respect the sea. They have to make small boats behave next to a giant hull. They have to think about safety without becoming slow, and think about speed without becoming stupid. That is a real skill set. It also takes a certain calm mindset, because almost every launch asks the crew to make something heavy, wet, awkward, and potentially dangerous look completely routine. And because the ESB supports such flexible operations from mine warfare, support to special mission staging, to small craft activity tied to broader naval presence, the boat crew ends up sitting near the center of the ship's practical value. Not its symbolic value, its practical value. So next time you hear life inside the boat crew launching missions from the belly of a U.S. Expeditionary Sea Base, do not imagine some side detail happening in the background. Picture a team in the lower mission deck of a giant floating base, controlling boats, lines, cranes, timing, and pure motion, until a mission craft drops into the sea and tears away from the hull. That is not secondary work. That is one of the ways the entire ship comes alive.